What's up, my fellow gamers out there? Let's start the video with a question. If you took a look at the gameplay of G-Police, what is your first thought? What do you think about this game? Well, I think you probably think the same as I did when I started to play, that this is going to be a mediocre, average, another arcade shooter game. But this was a big surprise for me, because this game is much better than I thought. I would say it's almost perfect. It's 99% perfect, but there is 1% which is like, okay, it could be a bit better. But is a game-breaking problem? No, not at all. This game is absolutely and totally worth play, and I'm really glad that I did. This is another example why it's still worth to play old games, because if I would miss and I would just skip G-Police, I would miss something really good. So, without any further delay, let's jump into the details and let me tell you why G-Police is still really worth to play today. Let's start the video. When you boot up G-Police, the very first thing that hits you is not action, is the atmosphere. I was greeted with a beautiful cinematic, highly detailed intro that honestly feels like it belongs to a 100-hour epic space RPG like Mass Effect or something, and definitely not a late 90s action game. This was a cold, industrial sci-fi tone that immediately pulled me in. I was genuinely surprised how good quality the video and the voice acting was. And then I noticed something. Look at the rifles the soldiers are carrying. Does it remind you of anything? Those are pose rifles straight out of the Aliens. Yeah, tell me that it is not just me, they are looking very familiar. Even the red LED counter on the side of the rifles. I love it. G-Police was developed by Psygnosis and released in 1997 on PC and PlayStation. If you grew up in the 90s, you know what Psygnosis was already well known at the time for visually ambitious titles like Wipeout, Destruction Derby, and G-Police was their attempt to bring that same futuristic identity into a fully 3D open-air combat game. But the premise was very different for its time. Instead of controlling a tank, a jet, or a spaceship in deep space, you pilot a police combat craft called the Havoc, patrolling a dense vertical megacity on Jupiter's moon, Callisto. And now I'm thinking this has anything to do with Callisto Protocol? Don't worry about that, we are reviewing retro games. I will review Callisto Protocol in 2036 and we can make a comparison at that time. So, G-Police is not just about shooting enemies, it was about policing a living city from the skies. At launch, G-Police was praised for its technical achievement, massive draw distances for the era, and its serious sci-fi tone. Some critics pointed out the learning curve and difficulty spikes, but most agreed that there was nothing else quite like it. Before we go any deeper into the gameplay, it's worth stopping for a moment and talking about what the G-Police actually is, because this isn't just a cool name for a futuristic cop unit. That was I thought before I started the game. In the world of G-Police, humanity has expanded beyond Earth and established massive industrial colonies. You see pulse rifle again. So, one of the most important of these is Callisto, a moon of Jupiter transformed into a gigantic vertically layered megacity. This city isn't just big, it's dense, industrial and completely dependent on corporate power. And this is where G-Police comes in. The G-Police is a government-controlled security force created to maintain order in a city that has grown too large, too complex and too dangerous for traditional law enforcement. Crime doesn't just happen on the streets anymore, it happens in the air, between skyscrapers, above factories, transport lines and residential zones stacked on top of each other. Regular police forces simply couldn't operate in an environment like this. So, the G-Police was established as an area police unit equipped with advanced combat craft, military-grade weapons and highly trained pilots. Their job is not only to stop crime, but to protect infrastructure, secure corporate assets, escort ground forces, and prevent the city from descending into chaos. What makes this especially interesting is that the G-Police operates in a morally grey space. They are not just peacekeepers, they are enforcers in a system where corporations, politics and public safety are tightly intertwined. And this is where the game takes a sharp turn away from being a simple action title and makes much better than a simple arcade shooter. You don't join the G-Police to become a hero, you join because your sister has been murdered, and the official story just doesn't add up. Becoming part of the G-Police gives you access to information to restricted areas and to a version of the truth that civilians never get to see. From the beginning, the narrative is slow, deliberate and grounded. There is no galaxy-saving prophecy, no Chosen One storyline. Instead, the story unfolds through mission briefings, radio chatter, and environmental storytelling. You slowly learn how this city functions, how power is distributed, and how easily the line between law enforcement and control can blur. Importantly, the game never dumps exposition on you. It trusts the player to listen, observe, and connect the dots. What makes G-Police special is that the story supports the gameplay rather than interrupting it. Every mission feels like a natural extension of your role within the G-Police, patrolling sensitive zones, escorting vulnerable units, tracking suspects instead of immediately eliminating them, making decisions that reflect restraint, not aggression. You're constantly reminded that you're not a soldier in a war zone, you're an officer operating inside a fragile system. And as the story progresses, the game begins to ask subtle questions. Who really benefits from this order? How much force is too much? And what happens when justice and obedience are no longer the same thing? All of this is handled quietly without cutscene overload or heavy-handed messaging. This deeper world building is the reason G-Police still works today. It's not just about flying a cool ship and shooting enemies. It's about existing inside a believable sci-fi society where every mission feels like part of a larger machine. And that's why, even decades later, the game doesn't feel shallow or disposable. One thing that genuinely surprised me is how much customization the game offers. Look, you can tweak performance settings choosing between longer draw distance with lower frame rate or smoother performance with reduced visibility. For a game from the late 90s, that's impressive. You can also fully customize the controls, which is absolutely essential for a game built around 6-axis movement. There's no analog sensitivity options, but honestly that just wasn't really a thing back then. And the good news, the controls are excellent. The Havoc ship moves smoothly, reacts quickly, and feels responsible. Using the air brake to pull up sharp turns is incredibly satisfying, and once everything clicks, flying becomes a joy rather than a struggle. I personally prefer the cockpit view, even though the game offers several camera angles. Being inside the ship adds immersion and really sells the fantasy of being a futuristic police pilot. The game includes dedicated training missions, and trust me, they are worth doing. They ease you into the controls, radar usage, and mission logic, so when the real mission begins, you are not fighting the interface. And visually, I love how each mission starts. Those green laser-like lines slowly drawing the instruments onto your HUD feels incredibly stylish. It's a small detail, but it adds so much character and atmosphere. At first glance, G-Police looks like a straightforward shooter, but this is absolutely not. The missions are varied and surprisingly thoughtful. Let me tell you some of my favorite missions from the game. One, I had to scan containers for illegal cargo. I had to escort and protect ground forces from the air. I had to follow suspects and dropping tracking beacons for the ground forces. And I had to escort trains while removing warheads under constant fire. I had to do tactical takedowns where positioning matters more than firepower. One standout example involves destroying a heavily armed gunboat. The only viable strategy is to fly high above it and attack from angles its weapons can't easily reach. And do you know how I figured it out? With strategic planning? No, from a fellow YouTuber walkthrough video, because I was struggling so much that I was getting really pissed off because none of my strategies were working. This mission was the prime example that isn't brute force gameplay. It's about thinking like a pilot and you have to use strategy. Your shields are slowly regenerating, which is generous, but later missions don't go easy on you. When enemies swarm you, regeneration only helps if you retreat, hide behind buildings, and regroup. Learning the radar is absolutely essential. Let me tell you how this works. The blue dots are your wingmen or your fellow team members, white dots are enemies. A white dot inside a square is your current target. Vertical positioning tells you if enemies are above or below you. What is critical is that you must listen to radio instructions. Not everything should be destroyed. Destroy the wrong target and the mission fails instantly. The game constantly reminds you that you are enforcing the law, not wiping out the city. And what about the difficulty of G-Police? Well, I had to say that the difficulty of the game is okay. The difficulty curve is mostly well handled, but is not perfect. Around the 10th mission, there is a noticeable difficulty spike, and oddly enough, some later missions are easier than the earlier ones. It's slightly uneven, but never unfair, as long as you understand the mechanics. In some missions, you're on a tight timer. If you haven't mastered ship control, you simply won't make it. This game demands competence, and that's part of it why it remains engaging even decades later. The soundtrack is a perfect match. It's ambient, futuristic, and slightly cold, reinforcing the sense that you are patrolling a massive industrial megacity. It never overwhelms, but it constantly supports the mood. Combined with the visuals, the city genuinely feels alive. Especially that if you go down to the street level, you can see cars roaming the streets, traffic lights are there at the junctions, some road signs can be seen, so the city really feels alive in the 32-bit game. Regarding the graphics, I had to say it is perfectly fine for its time. Of course, this game could work with modern graphics and cool effects too, maybe fog between the buildings, some rain, thunderstorm and stuff like this. But during my gameplay I never felt that all these are necessary, because the gameplay was good, the missions were interesting, and this is what matters for me. There's a nice touch in the game, because it supports both memory card saves and the password system. That means if your memory card is full, or you don't have one, you are still covered. It's a thoughtful design choice that shows the developers cared about accessibility. If I had to criticize G-Police, it would be this: environment variety. Yes, you are policing the same city and that makes sense, but the lighting never really changes. No daytime, no dawn, no dusk variations. Some lightning shifts alone could have added a lot more visual diversity without breaking immersion. I don't know if these would affect the game performance or anything, but I don't think that a purple or yellow or green background instead of the black would make a huge difference, but I am not a game developer. But this is just a minor complaint, not a game-breaking issue at all. So, should you play G-Police? Yes, definitely. If you are just slightly interested in these kind of flying shooter games, yes, definitely give it a try. It was really funny when I started to play it. It straight away the game pulled me in, and I was like, oh wow, this is really good. I've done the training missions and I went in expected really mediocre game, but the story and the missions are really just really hooked me, and the atmosphere really just kept me in the game. I think I did, I don't know, 6-7 missions straight away, and I was like, oh wow, this is going to be good, and I hope that, okay, it's not going to be finished anytime soon because the game is really good. And it's not going to be finished because you are looking at 30 missions, and I'm telling you that if you're going to do all those 30 missions, that takes skill, because the game is really punishing at the end. And as I mentioned, the difficulty spikes are there, but it's manageable. And because you have level passwords, if you really struggle on the level, or you're just thinking that okay, it's just too much, you can always skip to the next level. So it's definitely worth playing. Another very good example that old games, that doesn't mean that they are bad games. So even if you played the game back in the days, or you never played it, or you want to revisit it, it's definitely worth playing. And the good news is it has a second game as well. The G-Police, I cannot recall the name at the moment, but it has been released on PS1 as well, and I think on PC too, so I'm going to definitely play that one as well, because I enjoyed the first game and I'm really interested how the second game has been improved, and I hope it has been improved, they not made any fuck up with it, because it's definitely a quality game which is very much worth playing today. Thanks for joining me on this trip back to the golden age of gaming. If you love unearthing forgotten classics, or even the disasters, we got plenty more adventures ahead. So press start and subscribe to join the quest. The algorithm has dug up a couple more relics for you. They are right here on the screen, waiting to be discovered. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next Backlog Quest video.